The views and opinions expressed on this show belong solely to the hosts and their guests and do not reflect the views of any on-site institutions unless explicitly stated.
What's up, everybody? My name is Steve Vanderwall.
And I'm Justin Klosser.
And we're your hosts of Cannabis Cum Laude, a podcast devoted entirely to cannabis. We're going to talk cultivation, business, medicine, politics, culture, advocacy, and everything in between.
The cannabis industry is complicated. It's robust. It has a lot of moving parts. And it's our job to help you understand it just a little bit better. So tune in every week for a brand new episode. And if you have a question that you'd like answered on the show, send it on over to questions@cannabiscumlaude.com. Thanks. Enjoy the show. Hello again, Cum Laudians. Today we have the absolute pleasure of welcoming Josh and Kelly from Dragonfly Earth Medicine. Josh and Kelly are powerhouses in the cannabis industry with a special expertise in regenerative organic production. They created an organic certification that absolutely sets the standard, the highest standard in the cannabis industry, the DEMPure certification. They also were instrumental in the creation of the Science and Organic Regenerative Cannabis Cultivation Conference. Thank you so much, Josh and Kelly. Welcome to the show. How are you guys doing today?
We're doing really. Thank you so much for creating this space, and thank you for, bringing education to the community. Oftentimes, there's a disconnect between the consumer and the grower, so it's really, really important for us to bring the two together so that we can have a complete circle of healing.
Super honored today. It's great to be on here. We're really excited to just dig right into it.
Yeah, we are too. We've been talking about this conversation for the past week. Really excited to have you. And I think probably the best place for us to start is, could you give us the story behind the farm between Dragonfly Earth Medicine?
We've met in Oregon, and immediately, in the early 90s, and when we came together, we created this pact with ourselves that we were going to do everything natural, everything from nature, and it was going to be our life path. Now we're nearly 30 years into our relationship, and we have a 24-year-old son and his beautiful partner, Sierra, and we moved to Canada in 98 basically to grow cannabis and to be cannabis refugees, because we just didn't feel comfortable in the space in Oregon and California the way that it was. And when we came to British Columbia, it was so amazing. And then we chose to live far away out of town and in the mountains in an area of self-sufficient farmers. So we were able to tap into a never-ending line of regenerative food farmers and self-sufficient people who are living. And then we were able to create Dragonfly Earth Medicine and live this regenerative life. Now we've been on our farm for 15 years, and we've had Dragonfly Earth Medicine for about 15 years. And we've been growing everything out of native soil, all of nutrients created from our land. And also we create products for cannabis growers.
And also my background is in human health. I'm a naturopathic physician as well as a midwife. I work with women and children and also in disaster relief situations. So health and well-being. And it's been really hard for me to separate the health and well-being of the human being and what I've learned in school from the health and well-being of soil and the plant, and learning about the microbiome of the plant and learning about the microbiome of the human being, and just really an integrative practice between the two, health and well-being of all living things and the beautiful line that connects them all. So that's really how we took off and what we've continued to do.
Absolutely. I just want to clarify for my own thoughts. Now, the Dem Farm is currently in Oregon, or you guys are in British Columbia?
We're in British Columbia.
Oh,
yeah.
So I've definitely had that confused. I fully thought that you guys were still based out of Oregon.
We are based out of Oregon. We're from Oregon. Our products come out of Oregon. Our family is in Oregon. We have Canadian products.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That
Yeah,
makes way more
we've been
sense
in
to me now.
BC. We've been in BC now for
We're dual citizens.
24 years. So, and we've been on our farm here for 15 years. So before we were farming on our farm here, we were still doing a lot of farming. We were having large patches, cannabis patches, way out in the wilderness, and learning how to mix soil with nature's lead. So that's how we got into the idea of closed loop regenerative practices, was the inability to carry any amendments out. All you really could do was carry out your child and food and a couple of tools. And so we just learned how to take all of herbology and the lessons that all of the plants have taught us and start to integrate that into the health and well-being of a garden and the health and well-being of the actual cannabis plant.
And part of the thing is that we don't necessarily say where we're from, because we want people to think they can do it anywhere, you know. And when we won the Regenerative Cannabis Farm Award in California in 2016, you know, most of the regenerative farms are in California and Oregon, let's say, or somewhere, you know, not north. So
Right.
a lot of people don't recognize, hey, we're growing under the sun far up north in a snowy, cold environment. And so that, you know, that's a big part of, well, there's a little confusion there, but it's also good.
And we consider ourselves human beings. It's nice not to recognize borders and just come together as human beings and discuss our passion, no matter what language, culture, religion, belief system that you may have, that we can all come together on
and empower each other
on the reverence of this incredible medicinal master plant.
I love that.
Absolutely. That is really, really wonderful explanation as to why it is a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Ambiguous, I guess. Maybe I'm kind of falling back for lack of a better term. I would like to kind of dive more into the regenerative agriculture itself. And so I wanted to be able to put a kind of like a hard definition on it, if you will. And so I did a quick Google search to see what Google would tell me the definition of regenerative ag is. And it says that it's the conservation and rehabilitation approach to food and farming systems. Now, this is pretty broad and pretty general. Can you guys kind of break down what regenerative or regenerative agriculture means to you guys?
Yeah, it's to say that you want to be a sustainable farmer, or to say that you want to live sustainably, means that you're sustaining something. In this part of life, we are in a lot of broken systems. In this part of life, medicine is broken, agriculture is broken. So when we say regenerate, we want to add life to. So when someone says, I'm an organic farmer, well, unfortunately, in organic farming, with the way that the certification is presented itself, it's basically just certifying products that can come out of a plastic bottle. You could use even plastic mulch on your fields, which is single use and goes to the dump at the end of the year. There's many things in the USDA organic agriculture system which does not regenerate life on Earth. Now, when we say regenerative agriculture, what we're talking about is regenerating Earth by using other plants. If we're mentored by Mother Nature, if we're mentored by walking in an old growth forest and we see that plants fall on themselves, there's a succession to the canopy, there's a succession to growth and living and dying and composting. Regenerative agriculture uses a more complete permaculture system, a more raw material system where you create a lot of your own nutrients on the land. That's important because in the cannabis industry, we have so much testing and so much rigorous analytical lab reports that we have to do, that we have to be extremely careful what we put into our system, really different than food. Food probably would be incredibly toxic if we put the same system of cannabis on food. So we recognize that because we smoke cannabis, we're enlightened, we're smart because we think about it every day. And so we want our systems, because if they come off our land, we know where they come from. We know that there's not heavy metals in our land. We know that it's not supported by shipping through plastic. And so this is self-empowered, independent farming. This is not dependent on the store. It's not dependent on the big agriculture system. What we're doing is regenerating the last 100 years of industrial revolution. We've lost topsoil. We've created dead zones in oceans and waterways. We've also created dead zones within our body. So we see regenerative. When we talk about DEM pure farms, those farms grow food and medicine. So it's not okay to just grow cannabis because that doesn't regenerate life. You have to have food and integrated medicine with it.
And also, I think that it's really important that when we talk about the word regenerative, that we're able to put it into lots of different systems in our lives, not just regenerative agriculture, but regenerative lifestyle, regenerative relationships, regenerative business, regenerative and sacred commerce. All of these things need to be looked at so that we know that we're putting something into and we're getting out the same amount. Because I think what happens a lot in the cannabis industry and what happens a lot in humanity is that we put in very little and expect a tremendous amount out. And I know you all know that, especially in cannabis farming and cannabis growing, is like, well, dude, I put in a few things. Why isn't higher? You know, like, if you want something healthy, if you want something that's actually going to change your life, and if you want something that is going to make a difference, then you have to put in the same time, energy, effort, and put in that difference, put in that love and intention if you want love and intention to come back. Because a lot of the broken systems that we have today, which is the big pharma, big education, big agriculture, the idea is putting in very, very little, but expecting a tremendous amount back. And over time, that little degrades to barely nothing. And then we start creating systems off of nothing. And then when we create systems off of nothing, we're creating sickness on top of sickness. So we really need to pull back and recognize that this term regenerative needs to be looked at in all different facets of our life.
And lastly, we want our farm to be a positive impact on our environment rather than a negative impact. And all too often, our farms are not our farms, but farms in general can be a negative impact on Earth. So a regenerative farm is adding life by extra plants, polyculture, by and enhancing the bugs and the birds and the bees. Like, that's the positive impact. We're growing life. We're not displacing nature. We're creating space for nature, and we're growing in a natural nature setting.
There seem to be just tremendous and, quite frankly, endless benefits to not only regenerative agriculture, but regenerative life practices, like you said, business, education, you name it, right? Regenerative, it breeds life. In the context of climate, food quality, and cannabis quality, can you talk about some of the benefits of regenerative agriculture practices in the context of those three things?
Mm-hmm. So one of the most important aspects of regenerative agriculture is carbon sequestration, sequestering carbon. Now, you've seen a lot with hugelculture. You've seen a lot with cover crops, a lot with mulching, indoors, outdoors. We're starting to see indoor beds being created like outdoor beds. We're starting to see beds created with wood and rocks in the bottom of them in an indoor setting to mimic the outdoors, to create the drainage and the sequestration. But why it's important is because in the forest and even in farming, often things are burnt to clean them up. They gasify them. And instead of putting them back in the earth in chips and in cover cropping, when you put them back in the earth, they save and they sponge water. They become water retention.
And microbial retention.
And they add fungi. By putting carbon in the soil, you add fungi. Most of the soil reports that are done in cannabis or in agriculture often are lacking organic matter and are lacking fungi. By building soils with extra plants in them, by building soils with hay or alfalfa in the soil, with having ramial wood chips, RMC, ramial wood chips are really important for people to know, because wood chips can be straight carbon or they can be a living nutrient. Now, ramial means small branches and bushes. When you chip small branches and bushes, you're getting a lot of cambium layer and a lot of juice from the plant. When you put that in the soil, it immediately feeds the fungi, and it's more of a nutrient rather than a carbon, which is taking away from your nitrogen. So ramial wood chips are really smart, and you can do agroforestry and create these ramial wood chips every year very easily on your farm. Did you want to say?
Well, yeah, and also, like, as far as like answering your question in why is regenerative agriculture important in all of these different broken facets of the system, the most important thing about regeneration and working with regenerative agriculture is that it spreads out into every different part. You can learn about regenerative agriculture, and then it will teach you about all of the different areas in your life or the different areas in society that we're lacking. I mean, we have massive dead zones in water areas because of runoff of big ag. We have, who knows what's being sprayed in the air because of, a possible gassing off of our ozone layer. We've really not been treating our earth very well, nor treating the animals or humanity very well, because we keep thinking that by using isolated systems, which is what they're doing, losing the holistic aspects. And if we're not looking at things through a holistic lens, then isolating. And when we're isolating, we're creating illness. And that just is an absolute fact. And for some reason, the ancient Buddhists say one of the greatest maladies and illnesses of humanity is the need to know why. And that question of the need to know why gets us into a tremendous amount of trouble. Sometimes I think that nature has it already explained. And if we just follow her lead, there's not really a need to know why. It just is. And that relentless pursuit of needing to know why continues to isolate things. And then we're giving explanations for something that's isolated that no longer has a place in a holistic system. So we're trying to explain holistic systems even off of something that's been isolated. And so this is where regenerative education, regenerative practices, regenerative lifestyle actually can truly save the entire planet. Like when Josh and I are asked, like, how is it that we can clean up the earth and how is it that we can make a real difference? We think that the number one way that we can make a difference is just for everyone in the world to understand what soil is and the importance of soil, and that all of our health and well-being come from healthy soil, and that it is the basic building block for our ultimate intelligence and for the ability for us to get out of this deep hole that we're in right now. It has all of the answers, and it really is the only thing that we need to focus on in order for us to get out of where we're at right now. Because if you look at nature, she only has one goal. She makes soil. That's it. Mother Nature is in a constant relentless pursuit of making soil. And if we just followed that lead, then really all of the maladies, all of our illness, all of our mental illness would all really drop away. And
basically, in a nutshell, it takes healthy bodies to create regenerative soil. It's good for you. It takes a little more energy to build the soil. Once the soil is built, it takes less energy for you to grow it because the energy is being done in the soil. So what we need to get good at is positive breakdown, positive layering, covering the soil, let the soil eat. We're really soil farmers.
Yeah, it's it really kind of like just solidifies this overarching viewpoint that both Steve and I carry of like even really cannabis in general, the entourage effect, right? Of like having everything working in harmony, and like if a little bit of everything, the more diversity you have, the better that everything is going to work. And I think that your guys' farm, all of your successes with the DemPure certification, the conference, all of that, I think really speaks to how true that is. And I mean, you guys turned, from what I was seeing on your website, a relatively barren farm and turned it into a beautiful regenerative farm. Like, I guess my curiosity there is like, how long did it take you to get to a point to where you were like, we have this built? It's like, how long does it take to get from your building soil to like, we're there now, it's time to maintain it, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know if you can really answer that, only because it seems like, well, yeah, there is probably an answer for how many years or how many seasons and stuff. But if every year you're adding and you're layering and you're intricately involved with that soil, then each year it becomes better. And it's sort of interesting because when you're really with it, you wonder, like, one year you're like, whoa, could this soil get any better? You know, you could be on your third year and you're like, I don't even think this soil could get any better, because you're so intricately involved with it. You know it really well. You've put everything into it. It has all of your love and your vitality. And it's sort of the same way that, you know, if you're in a really good place in your life, it's hard to believe that you're going to be in a better place in your life sometime down the road. But if you continue to put good things into your life, if you continue to put good things into your soil, then all that can happen is a greater expression of what you're putting into it. And that continues to happen year after year.
Years without internet in another country, far away from home, doing midwifery and natural building. And that's where we spent years, like, walking our talk, or we weren't even talking at the point, but just
we're just walking.
Let's say just
no talking.
Exploring what was possible, you know. And then the internet comes, and you can see, you know, we start our company. We've always worked with cannabis farms ever since the early 90s, since the mid 90s. We've always worked with cannabis farms. We've always worked with organic cannabis farms up and down the west coast of the US and British Columbia. We've always been involved in it. So we've always had family and in that network. Now, when, you know, the industry developed, and as it started to become mature, now all of a sudden these farms are becoming recreational. Everyone's starting to come up to the table. So we're a part of this awakening from our beginning, because it's not the beginning, it's our beginning. And then we were able to share our experience. And that's when Instagram started. You know, now we're starting to do conferences all over. If you look at our YouTube page, we have 42-hour videos on how to do these things. So now we're at a place where there's farms all over the world now that practice this. We have a really amazing athlete here from Canada named Matt McDuff, and he's an incredible mountain biker. You guys got to look him up. He's super interested in food now. He's super interested in medicine, and he's walking around our farm here right now for the first time. He just showed up, And he's like, wow, you guys are saving me years of development, because this is my dream. My dream is to have a piece of land like this that I can do my professional jumps and all this stuff, but also live well with food and medicine. So we hope that our experiences and the other experiences indoor farming, like Green Life Productions and other people, and outdoor farming, that people can understand the congruency and the connection between indoor growing and outdoor growing. And there should be enough examples out there to give people the confidence to take on these systems. We have a big network in Europe now and in UK. We just did a podcast in the UK 4 days ago. And there's a huge amount of people taking on beds in regenerative agriculture where they were naysayers 1 year ago. But now with COVID and the lockdown, and when you start making hash from regenerative soils, and you start making extracts, and you start making products, and you start lab testing, you start realizing, wow, this is actually a totally different plant than what I used to be growing. The characteristics within the plant, the color within the plant, the shape of the leaf it's a different plant. It's in its full vitality mode. And these are the things that you can't teach someone that. They have to see it for themselves. Once they see it for themselves, that's the regenerative part. Now all of a sudden, they don't just see it for themselves. Now all of a sudden it's not just about their garden. They're like, well, why am I going to give my plants all organic food, but then go drink Mountain Dew afterwards? I think I probably should go drink something better for myself. I probably need to eat all organic food. And then they realize, oh, wow, I can stick some food in my backyard or on my terrace, or even I can grow food in my cannabis garden. Now I'm lessening the weight of corporate farming. I'm lessening the weight of processed food. And that's the importance. That's the revelation. That's the awakening that we're seeing. So to answer your question on is there a time that a soil is just maintaining? No. I mean, we're always bettering ourselves. We're always bettering our soil. That's like saying, is there going to be one, strain that you're going to want to have forever and ever? And the answer is no, because there's always going to be a strain that you want to make and create that's better. And when you start getting into regenerative soils, it's the microbiology that starts to be integrative, not only in the soil, but also integrative within your own body. And this microbiology is an incredibly intelligent, it's all the way down to the mitochondria. It runs the cells within every single cellular, living body. So when you have regenerative soils, you have intelligent life forms. And when you're working with intelligent life forms, then you're ingesting those intelligent life forms. You're choosing to surround yourself with intelligent life forms. So those intelligent life forms are always pushing you to be better, they're always evolving. Pushing you to make better soil, to create a soil that's more aligned with nature, because that is the intelligent and biological lesson that they have to teach you. And depending how raw the soil is, 3 cycles, you're going to start to see really good breakdown. The first cycle, you can totally get beautiful results. Second cycle, you can still get good results. But by the time you get into your third, fourth, fifth, now you're starting to really benefit. Less teas are needed. Less water is needed, because the soil has become more sponge-like, more retentive, more retention. So, 1 year into a regenerative farm, indoors or outdoors, you're going to see a very significant difference, which is going to give you the inspiration. Then you start getting into 2, 4, 10, 15 years, and it's just a whole different thing.
There's no turning back, right?
Well, I was just going to say, there's, just looking at my question sheet, there's a lot of different, there's not like, here's one technique and that's your regenerative ag technique. There's a plethora of different techniques, from Korean natural farming, aquaponics. What type of different practices or, do you guys employ on your farm? And would you be able to talk a little bit about those techniques?
Well, I think that we've been talking about mentoring from Mother Nature and, this whole time. And that's really the basis of our education and the basis of our practices here on our farm. So we're really looking towards Mother Nature and also the ancient studies of plants, bringing in, the pharmacology of plants, 5,000-year-old tradition of Chinese medicine. And we're integrating all of those herbs, roots, things that we're growing on our farm because we see them also as master plants. So not only are we bringing in the master microbiology, but we're also bringing in the master plants because we don't have it all figured out. And we feel like nature has a much higher resonant, educated mass as well as history that you really can give us the pathway. And it's a very clear pathway. So nature layers. Nature uses what's in her environment. Nature is continuously trying to make soil. Everything that comes up from the earth is then dropped down into the earth. And we are really mimicking everything that she has to offer. We went from creating hot thermophilic compost piles to just now cold compost piles just right onto our beds because that's what nature does. We want to be farming vigorously when we're 85. And we need to set up systems that can create really healthy, vigorous farming for when we're 85. So that means lessening the dynamic systems that we have within the integrative systems. So nature uses less systems. And our big goal here is how can we lessen those systems, lessen our time and energy on the farm that have a much higher output on the health and vitality of the soil and the health and vitality of the plants. And maybe Josh will tell you some of the specific systems.
I mean, some people are like, oh, it's easy for you to say you live on a piece of land. Well, we put our ass on the line, moved to another country. We chose a region that benefited us in the style of growing we did. Then we got a piece of land that was raw and we made it happen. So no, it wasn't handed to us. We worked very hard to make this work. And now what we have is a piece of land that is on a... Hello. Sorry.
Hello. Hi.
We have a piece of land that's on a slope that has spring water coming out above our land. So all of our water that comes onto our land is gravity fed out of a spring. We created our own water box that collects the water directly out of the earth. That water goes directly to our house. All the water that we drink is spring water, untreated, right out of the earth. All that water overruns our system, comes into a pond and goes down our land. We had a hill that we started creating terraces on. So our terraces are our life pads. They're pads of life, let's say. Before it was somewhat barren and there was a horse on it and the horse ate all of the grass and left it a hard pan type of dirt. What we did is
there wasn't even really any dirt, lots of gravel and rock.
One of the earliest teachings we learned was never burn piles on your land, never burn sticks, never burn splash piles. And when you build something of piles of dimensional wood at the bottom of the hill, we have piles of wood, branches, piles of sawdust, piles of wood chips. We have some compost piles from invasive weeds like burdock. We have compost piles, some from a little bit of manure that we get. So when we go to build a new soil or a new bed, we're taking from different parts of our land and adding it to this.
And we've gone through, we were some of the very first students of Master Cho when he came to the Big Island. We studied his books at the very, very beginning.
In 2008.
And we were already doing fermenting teas because we were taught about how to ferment teas from the Quakers in this zone and area. So they were already making fast nutrients, liquid nutrients But they were just doing weed teas. And then we started to take some of what Master Cho had to offer, some of what Teruo Higo had to offer.
Dr. Teruo Higa from Japan, who created EM, effective microorganisms,
which we still utilize today. And we just have taken a lot of their practices and then just what works for us. What don't we have to add? What don't we have to buy? A lot of KNF has a lot of sugar in it. We don't eat sugar.
And
we don't want to bring sugar. We don't grow sugar. It's not part of what we utilize here. Our microbiology doesn't understand sugar here. It also doesn't understand rice. We don't grow rice here, nor does cook rice maybe speak to the microbiology here in our zone and area. So when we're doing indigenous microbiology or when we're making our teas, we're not adding anything from the outside. We're looking towards highly
This meeting is being recorded.
Super healthy plants and herbs in the area to sort of make blends and mixes that speak to the plant cycles or speak to some of the maladies that the plants may be having at that particular time.
We will add certain new trees and certain new bushes and certain new plants that will take up different things out of the soil. So if we want to enhance our diversity, we're going to enhance it through plant life. And that's what we can do here. And
if we want to enhance it too, we'll be enhancing it through indigenous microbiology and indigenous microorganisms from what's here. So we may take a little handful of a zone and area that's really close to our area, that's super pristine, that smells really beautiful, that you can see all of the mosses are really incredible. We may take 2 tablespoons of that soil and inoculate it into a 150-foot bed.
When you have a bed that's covered, it's basically a culture, right? It's the agriculture that we're working with. We have a culture. By adding, we want our beds and our aisles to be the compost. The beds and the aisles are the indigenous microorganism sink. We're taking parts of our environment and we're adding it to the bed to do a secondary compost somewhere else and then feather it in. That's not really effective. It's also more work. So if you can figure out making your bed the compost, it's a revelation.
Making the bed the green manure, making the bed your indigenous microorganisms.
All of a sudden, the aisle that you're walking on all year becomes 6 to 8 inches of soil the next year because you packed so much hay in there that now all of a sudden you're just digging your aisle out and putting it on top of your bed and re-adding it to the aisle. So it's really an awesome system.
So to sort of answer really briefly, like on what is it that Dragonfly Earth Medicine, what do we do that might be different than other different modalities of really awesome growing and regenerative practices? We just sort of take from all different things and have come up with a system that works for us, that flows really easily by utilizing
by other people.
Yeah, and that's just really palatable. We do fermented teas. We do a tremendous amount of fermented teas.
And we have our own special style on that, which we can get into if you want.
Mm-hmm. And we make all of our own inoculants for it because after this amount of time and looking under so many different microscopes and really testing our teas and tasting our teas, we just know now what makes a good tea and what doesn't. And what kind of herbs that we can put in for different cycles of the plant's life to create that type of growth or create the type of health that we're looking for.
Yeah, sounds like we could do an entire episode on teas. That's something that often gets brought up in our conversations because I have a little bit of I'm a newbie, right? Been practicing with compost teas for a few years. A lot that I've learned from him. We should definitely maybe regroup and have another conversation entirely about compost teas because I have a million questions and what are good inputs? What should I put? How long should I bubble? Blah blah blah. So that's definitely something that's I'm particularly interested that I would love to have a future in-depth conversation on if you'd be open to it.
Super open to it
That'd be
anytime.
great. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. We love
Awesome.
talking about our teas.
Thanks to our friends here at Rockbox Recording and Production in Rochester, New York. They are a full professional podcast and video studio designed by a radio guy for podcasters. Audio, video, voiceovers, editing, whatever. Mouth off at Rockbox at rockbox.com.
You can follow Cannabis Cum Laude on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Cannabuzz. Type Cannabis Cum Laude into your search bar and you should be able to find us, but the links will also be posted in the episode notes as well. If you want to help support the show, head on over to Patreon, and that will ensure that we're able to keep the best quality sound and video coming to you on a regular basis. And if you liked what you heard today, please don't forget to rate and review the show.